Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength BodCast. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into this week's edition of the Original Strength BodCast. We have a real live superhero with us this week, Miss Sarah Thomas. And if you don't know, Sarah is the first person in the entire world to swim the English Channel. That's from England to France and back from France to England. She did it 4 times nonstop. And it only took her 54 hours. Sarah, thanks for being on the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and chat with you today.
So you really are like a real live superhero. You have done pretty much, did you think it was, obviously you didn't think it was impossible, but no one's ever done it before. Why would you ever want to swim across the English Channel? Not once, but 4 times. And I think you've actually done it like 2 times before that time.
Yeah, so I did it one time before that. I've been over there a couple of times just helping other people do swims. And, there is just something magical about the English Channel. It's just, it's the equivalent of like climbing Mount Everest for climbers. It's just one of those things that if you get into open water swimming, at some point you think, yeah, maybe someday I'd like to swim the English Channel. And then you go over there and you meet this incredible community of people who are all waiting their turn to swim the channel too. And you go to the swimmers beach in Dover, which is kind of the main training area. And you just see all these swimmers from around the world of differing levels of experience. And they're all just together swimming back and forth in Dover Harbor, waiting their turn to swim. And it's just this really special, unique experience. And once you get over there once and experience it and have a piece of that, I think most people are left like wanting more of that. And so people come back in crew or do relays or swim it again, or if they fail, they have to come back and try for round 2. And I think, just being over there and being so connected to that community, I was kind of progressing in my own swimming career. I swam the channel the first time in 2012. And when I was there, I met a woman who had attempted a double. And so, we're sitting on the rocky beach in Dover, and, I'm nervous about my first one, and she's, telling me about her attempt to go there and back. And I just remember thinking that she was superhuman and amazing and all of these things. Then you go on and you do your swim and it's great and wonderful. And there's just something magical about it. And, I did that swim in 2012 and then kind of started doing some longer swims after that. And at some point you start to think, well, I know people swim there and back, and now I've been doing some longer swims, and what, maybe I could push the limits of what people have said is possible in the English Channel. There's a handful of people who have done it 3 times, and that had been done before. And it's like, well, I've done 100-mile swim in a lake and an 80-mile swim in a lake now, and time-wise it should come out somewhere in the middle of all that. And I think I can give it a shot. And I did. It's just one of those things, you dream it and then it's just stuck in your head until you give it a try.
So how far across is it when you swim it, or when anybody swims it? I mean, I'm sure it's not supposed to change.
Yeah. Well, so point to point in the English Channel, from Dover to the Cap. So if you look at it on a map and you find Dover and then you draw a straight line directly across, that is the shortest distance. And that is right about 21 miles. So most people will say that the English Channel is 21 miles because that's the distance between the shortest distance possible. Because of currents and tides and a whole bunch of other factors, you can land anywhere along the French coast. And that could make your swim longer or shorter. But in marathon swimming, we typically count the distance as the shortest distance between 2 points in a straight line. And it's kind of, people outside of the swimming world sometimes think that's crazy because, a marathon swimmer would never be like, well, English Channel, I swam 31 miles today. because the shortest distance is 21. So that's really all you can get credit for when you swim the English Channel, is a one-way distance of about 21 miles. If that makes sense. That's kind of
It
hard to explain
it
sometimes.
it does, but so you swim it 4 times nonstop, 54 hours.
Yep.
But because of the things you just said, you didn't actually swim it 21 miles times 4 actual
Right.
swimming. You swim at a total of 130 miles.
Sure. I like to say I traveled 130 miles, just
Okay.
with the current giving me a push or something like that. So yeah, I mean, that distance was there, through no fault or courage of my own. That's just how it works in the channel. Currents are really strong. You have to have a really experienced boat pilot to position you correctly in the tide so you actually land at the right place. So yeah, you may travel more, but no one can swim it in a direct straight line ever. Like, it's never been done.
I actually watched the video of you getting out of the water when you finished the swim. Do you
That would be the
remember that?
best. Yeah, I do. We were in a moment where the current was trying to change against me, and I had like no idea where I was or even really how close I was, other than that I was almost there. And my boat crew was like, put your head down and sprint. And so, I'm like hammering it into the finish, trying to push against the tide that's kind of trying to push me back out into the middle of the channel. And so I crawled out, and it's like, whoa, I didn't know I was going to make that until there was actually rocks, that I could touch and feel. And so, yeah, you climb out, and it's like, whoa, I did that. But like the immediate rush was like, holy cow, like the last half an hour was really intense. And so that was kind of my overwhelming emotion. I was like, oh, I'm glad I'm not sprinting anymore.
I can't imagine, because you looked like you just did this amazing thing and you got everybody rushing to you celebrating, but you just had this look of like, just let me sit here for a second. I mean, I don't know. Like, and then I was
Yeah.
wondering, I was like, does she even remember that at all?
Yeah. I do. It's a little fuzzy. It's fortunate there's enough videos so I can kind of like rewatch it if I need to. Like, oh yeah, that did happen. Normally in marathon swimming, no one pays attention to you, right? You do this long swim, and there's nobody waiting for you when you finish, and so you just have this like personal celebration of like, yay, I swam 20 miles today, and that's enough. And so it was unexpected to me, for there to be a crowd at the finish. And so that was part of it. I was like, there's all these people. I've never had, 20 people all gathered to like cheer for me. The whole moment was very surreal on my end, for sure.
I can't imagine. And it did look like, I mean, they were celebrating. It was a big
Yeah,
deal.
people were excited.
So if you're swimming for 54 hours, um, what does your mind do?
Yeah,
Like, where do you go?
yeah, you go any place you can possibly imagine, in that time. Um, I mean, personally, I prefer it when you can just kind of be in like a zen, like not thinking about or feeling anything, and you're just in the rhythm of, the water, and looking at the boat and your stroke, and, just everything's kind of melding together into one, and it's just really peaceful and calming. That's kind of the rarity. You aim for that, but of course there's going to be disruptions, like when you're swimming through a swarm of jellyfish, so now you're thinking about not getting stung by a jellyfish, or your shoulder's really hurting, so you're focused on your stroke technique so that you're not injuring your shoulder, or there's other things going on that really distract you. And so sometimes you can look at the boat and see what they're doing on the boat. Other times you're singing songs in your head, or writing your book, or reliving like, oh, that was really stupid. I remember on one long swim, I like had this epiphany that I forgot something at work before I left on vacation. And so like, things just like pop in and out, and you're like, I shouldn't be thinking about work right now. Why did I even think of that? So, it goes, everything that can happen happens in your brain.
Were you actually able to find that Zen spot a little bit, or back and forth, in and out sometimes during that swim?
Yeah, I was kind of sick in the middle of this English channel, and it really messed with my Zen. I just had a lot of nausea, and I had a really hard time finding that quiet place. I feel like I was way too present during this swim. Um, there was just a lot of things happening. So, yeah,
So
as much as I wanted, that's for sure.
I it's really like that alone is amazing because like 54 hours. I was before I started talking with you, I started thinking, Tim, I don't even think you've ever stayed awake for 54 hours straight. And then I was
It's a
like,
long time to
I,
stay awake.
I don't know if I could.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Uh,
but she swam 54 hours.
yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, I think some people are more able to do that than others. I don't know if it's genetics or just like mental toughness. I don't know if there's science behind it or what, but I don't have hallucinations. I've done it a few times at this point. Uh, and that I'm thankful for. But a little bit of caffeine goes a long way. And I think, if you were just like sitting on your couch trying to stay awake, it would be really hard. But when the danger of falling asleep is drowning, that gives you a lot of
Motivation.
motivation to keep moving and, keep your head breathing so that you're not going under the water.
So that's a good point. I would say yes, you definitely have mental toughness. That's got to be. I don't know that that's genetic, but you definitely have it. You said you were sick during that swim, nauseous. Did that
Mm-hmm.
have anything to do with what you were recovering from?
Yeah, I don't think so. Um, it's not something that I've really dealt with in the past, so who knows? But I don't think that there was a connection there.
And if you're listening at home, Sarah is a true superhero. She swam this. This was in 2019 in September, so it's a year and 1 week from today that you did this.
Mhm.
But before that, was it a year before that you were diagnosed with breast cancer?
Um, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in November of 2017.
Okay.
And then through all of my treatment, and I actually finished my treatment at the very end of August of 2018. So this English Channel swim came just barely 1 year, so like 13 months at the end of my active cancer treatment. And
Wow.
so I had been through chemo. I did 5 months of chemo, and then I had a right-sided mastectomy, and then I did 5 weeks of radiation. And so I did all of that, and then radiation was the last thing that I did. And it was 1 year following the end of my radiation treatment that I jumped in the English Channel.
You're just a rock star. Um, when you were going through all that, did you train? How did you like keep your focus? Because I like obviously you love to swim. You were swimming before,
Right.
and you probably had swimming goals and things
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to do. Like how did you put your head down and swim and sprint?
Yeah, sure. Um, So let's see here. This English Channel swim was booked before I was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
There's usually a pretty long wait. So I had booked this swim, had been planning on it since probably like March, April sometime of 2017. So the spring of 2017, I had signed up, like paid a deposit, booked the time slot, all of that stuff. So it was done. And then I was diagnosed with cancer. And to answer your question, I wouldn't call it training what I did during all of my treatment, but I did swim quite a bit. I was probably, chemo was basically once a week, every Thursday. Um, and so I would swim 3 or 4 times a week as I could. I always made a point my chemo was usually like on a Thursday morning. And so I always made a point to get up and swim before I went to chemo because that was the best I was going to feel for the whole week. So I might as well get in like one final workout. And kind of the cycle with chemo is, I would go on a Thursday. I had to wait 48 hours after treatment. And then kind of after that 48 hours, I would start to feel a little bit better. So I wasn't allowed in the water for 48 hours. Just I had a port in my chest where they would infuse the chemo. And so they wanted the port to clear up or like heal up, and then I could swim. And so usually on Saturday morning, I'd get up and go swim. My husband would drive me so that I didn't get too tired for the drive back home after I'd swim. But, usually I would swim a couple of times on, Saturday, Sunday, maybe, a couple of times during the week, and then always on Thursday morning before treatment. And I just kind of kept up that routine. Obviously my doctors knew about my swimming past. And, we were a couple of months into treatment, and then I'm starting to like tell them like, hey, I got this like English Channel thing planned in like a year. What do you think? And they were like, you might be crazy, but we'll see what we can do, I guess. Like they don't want to commit. But we talked about it. I made a lot of treatment decisions, plan of care decisions based off of this English Channel swim, especially when we started talking about mastectomy and reconstruction surgery and all of that stuff. It's standard to put implants under your pec muscle. It just gives it a little bit more protection and form. But, I'm a swimmer, and that is where my power comes, is from my pec muscles. So, there was just a lot of discussion with multiple surgeons about, is this a good choice? Is there anything we can do instead? Or kind of what are my options? And so there's just tons of discussion all based around this English Channel swim that they all probably thought I was insane, because like, hey, you've got cancer. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But, I got this other stuff I got to do in about a year and a half. So let's make it happen. Okay.
So you never lost sight of that then, of that goal, that target?
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't, and it was something I hung on to it pretty tight. And I think, honestly, that was probably really important when I was going through all my treatment, because it kept me motivated. There was something beyond, like it's hard when you're going through cancer treatment to not get just like lost in the moment, because it's terrible, right? You hurt, you're sick. You don't 100% know if your body is going to respond to treatment. I got really lucky that I had a great response to chemo, and that doesn't always happen. You don't know that going into like, am I going to have a positive response? Or, there's just so much unknown, and that is scary, and I'll fully admit to like many nights of like sobbing in bed and anxiety attacks and depression. I mean, there was all of that, but swimming, hanging on to swimming, one was helpful in the moment, just from a mental standpoint. I had an outlet for all of those scary, terrible emotions. They also really do encourage you to exercise during treatment. I think in the past, there's, the vision in the picture of someone who's a cancer patient, and they're just like sick and laying in bed and resting, and that's really not the case as much anymore. They've got a lot of things dialed in where it is beneficial to like get up and move around. Obviously don't overexert yourself. Could never train the way that I was training during chemo, but staying slightly active and making sure you're keeping your nutrition moving and your hydration, like all of those are only beneficial to chemo. So, doctors really encouraged me to do as much as I could during treatment. So, there's that short-term effect of, like chemo was a little bit easier, I think, because I was drinking so much water because I was hot from the swimming pool. And then physically recovering from my surgery, because I was already fit and strong, I already had a base. So when I'm trying to do my PT after therapy or after my mastectomy, like I know how to work my muscles. I know how to lift weights. I know what good hurt feels like. So, there's just all of these things in short term that being able to swim through it was really helpful. But then in the long run, in the big picture, it's like, I have a goal, like there will be a time after cancer, and I could focus on that from a much larger perspective. So, you're seeing the forest and you're not lost in the trees, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So, really good things.
Nice. That's beautiful. When during you said you wouldn't call it training, but you were swimming. Were you able to, during those swims, were you able to find that, I guess, Zen state of mind in those swims?
Yeah, for sure. So just the way stuff happened, I had to go about 4 weeks at the beginning of everything before I could swim. So, you get diagnosed, you go through like all these doctor's appointments, they're doing biopsies, you get your port placed, and all this stuff has to heal. And then all of a sudden you're doing chemo. So there was like a 4-week period where I couldn't swim between when I had my port placed and then at the start of my second chemo. And so by the time, so I went for a swim, and I'm still healthy, right? Like I don't feel sick, everything's fine. And then 4 weeks later, I now lost all my hair from chemo. I'm tired, I'm weak. And that very first like opportunity to get in the water, I remember just like being terrified. Like I've had 2 rounds of chemo, I've got this port. What's going to happen when I get in this swimming pool? And a couple of my friends were really fabulous and met me, and we went into the swim like with 0 expectations. And I remember just like sliding into the water and like my first few strokes, and there's like this big sigh of relief. It was like, I do know how to swim. I still float. And that was kind of the first step in overcoming a lot of fears, is no matter what happens through all of this, I will still float and I will still be able to move my arms around so that I can swim. It may not look like what it used to, and it may not ever be what I want it to be, but at the end of the day, I will always be able to swim. And that was huge. It was just like, that was a big moment in my cancer treatments. Like, you know what? It'll be okay.
Wow. That's beautiful. So it's been a year and a week. It's the anniversary of your swim. Mm-hmm. Did you celebrate? Did you do anything special?
I didn't. All this COVID quarantine stuff has kind of ruined a lot of things, but I knew the date was coming up, and it was just kind of didn't do anything special.
Have you got any other plans or any other big swims in the books that you want to, or anything that you want to tackle?
There's definitely some swims out there that I'm still maybe considering. Nothing's really planned at this point. So, at some point I would like to do like a straight 100-mile, like point to point ocean swim without any current assistance. So a long-term goal, maybe in the next couple of years, if we could get something figured out.
So you've also swam at least 100 miles or more in a lake. Mm-hmm. How different is it swimming in a lake versus swimming in the ocean?
Totally different. The saltwater buoyancy makes a drastic difference.
For the good?
In 2017, I swam 104 miles in Lake Champlain, which is a really long lake, kind of right on the border of New York and Vermont, and it kind of, the end part of it goes up into Canada. So I did that swim, so 104 miles, and it took me 67 total hours. Compare that to a channel swim that was 84 miles with, if you want to use 130 miles of distance traveled in 54 hours. So one of my friends who I've known since college, she messaged me after the English Channel, and she said, this English Channel swim is really impressive, and I'm so proud of you, but it really puts into perspective how hard that Lake Champlain swim was. And it's true, the saltwater it lifts you up a little bit more, so there's a lot less pressure on your joints. At the end of this English Channel swim, I still had enough in the tank to sprint into the end. And when I finished Lake Champlain, I could barely move. So just a night and day difference as far as like pain, like the pain level from the Lake Champlain swim is like out of this world compared to what I went through in the English Channel. So feeling a little more confident and optimistic about a 100-mile ocean swim compared to a 100-mile lake swim, which I don't think I'll ever want to try and do a 100-mile lake swim again, because that was pretty messed up situation.
If you're listening at home, I've been sitting here celebrating her 54-hour swim when all along she's been thinking, yeah, but I've done a 67-hour
Yeah,
swim
yeah.
because
That's
I'm a
it. That swim,
superhuman.
the Lake Champlain swim gets lost in the shuffle. The English Channel was, it's an iconic location, right? People heard about that swim. It is colder. There are tides and currents and all of these things to contend with. But yeah, at the end of the day, I've been in the water for 67 hours, which was a learning experience in and of itself.
That is crazy. Oh my gosh. And I knew you'd swam that, but I didn't know how long it took. Like,
Hmm.
so you're amazing.
Thanks.
So you've clearly established that a human really doesn't have any limitations, even when faced against like just huge, what would seem like huge obstacles or huge walls or limiters. Do you have any advice for people that like come up against obstacles or diagnosis or just goals in general, like wanting to reach for something?
Mhm. Yeah, I personally believe that when you find something that you're passionate about, whatever that thing is, for me, it is long distance open water swimming. You have an obligation to yourself to put that thing, whatever that passion is, first in your life. And I know for some people it could be their kids or, other hobbies, or, we all have different things that make us excited and what makes us tick. And I think, I am happy in life because I know that I've given my swimming the best chance that it has to be successful. And, I feel like we owe that to ourselves, and it's hard. It takes a lot of scheduling and planning and sacrifice, and you know doctors looking at you like you're absolutely insane when you're like, I know that I have cancer, but I really want to swim the English Channel 4 times. um, you There's just, when you have that drive and you find that thing, you have to push through, you have to make it happen, or else what are we doing? Like, what is the point in life if we're not pursuing the one thing that makes us happy and excited? And that, I think, is really important.
And that is probably the best way to end the show. That was awesome. You have an obligation. I wrote that down. You have an obligation to
Okay.
yourself to pursue your passion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Sarah Thomas, and she is a true superhero. Sarah, thanks so much for being on this show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this edition of the Original Strength Podcast.